this relationship demands the road cleared, but by clearing the road, you're actually clearing the road to much more than just this relationship. So you're clearing the road to your own self, and you know, the relationship is guiding you back home to you.
Love it.
And so in the process of doing that, you're not just like, oh, and now I'm going to learn more about plants. I mean, that's cool. But you're actually, what you're doing is like, oh, now I'm going to learn about me, and I'm going to reconnect to myself, like my big self.
Indeed.
And that really is what the plants, I think, are after, because this is what we need to do now.
In today's busy world, how can we find the inspiration, knowledge, and energy to live a healthy and empowered life? If we balance and harmonize our mind, exercise our body, live according to the laws of nature, and connect to spirit, can we find a way to heal, become our authentic self, and live our purpose with love? I am your hostess, Amy Fournier, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. And I'm back. Welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. Today, my guest is Dr. Monica Gagliano, who is the definition of a pioneer. And wow, a super important pioneer. Because have you ever thought about the consciousness of plants and the consciousness of non-human things like animals and rocks and all of nature, all of life for that matter? We used to think that, you know, only humans were the superior ones, and that we had language and we communicated and we were the dominant species of the planet. But now we know better. We just didn't have the ability and the tools to, quote unquote, scientifically prove that other forms of life also have forms of communication and consciousness. Just because we didn't have the devices to detect it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. An important thing to remember. So you're going to love today's episode. It's fascinating. It's educational. It's eye-opening. It's heart-opening. And it's so, so important because my guest, Monica Gagliano, is an evolutionary behavioral ecologist and scientist. She's extremely well published. And like I mentioned, she is a pioneer because she actually founded the field of plant bioacoustics, and which basically she used sound waves in the low end audio range of the scale and ultrasonic levels and detected frequencies in plants, which is a way that the plants communicate with each other. In fact, a little hint, I guess Darwin, you know, Darwin's theory of evolution, I guess he was aware of this type of sound communication of plants because he was actually recorded as playing music to his plants. And just as music affects us, music affects everything because it's all about sound, vibration, and frequency. You've probably heard me mention before, if you are a regular listener to the show, that sound, just like food and water and words and thoughts and feelings, these are all forms of information and instructions for our cells. Very, very powerful and very, very empowering once you know, right? That's why we have to be very, very astute and picky about what we expose ourselves to, both physically, emotionally, and mentally. So Monica is the author of the very popular book called Thus Spoke the Plant. I have it. It's fascinating. In it, she gives all the research and goes into detail about her extensive scientific tests and a lot of her background. She actually had a background in marine biology, which was the foundation for going into the plant kingdom, which is super fascinating because the power of a lot of her discoveries came from the fact that she had what's called the beginner mind, in that she's not a quote-unquote trained botanist, but that actually worked out for her favor because it allowed her to see things that other professionally trained plant specialists didn't necessarily see. So next time you think you're not qualified or you don't have the right credentials for something, keep that in mind. sometimes that can work in our favor because you don't know what you don't know, and you see things because you're open to everything. You're curious about everything. Everything is new to you, and you don't go in with any predetermined expectations that were put in your head from someone else. And you can form your own thoughts and own observations and things. So that was the basis of a lot of Monica's success, which I thought was quite encouraging, I must add. So we talk about many fascinating things on this show, like how the plant kingdom communicates with us and how the gift in plants can be lost if we're feeling disconnected from ourselves and others. And I thought it was really cool how Monica mentioned how the plants actually told her how to write the book and what to put in it. She goes into examples of exactly what she meant by that because I had to find out exactly what she was talking about. And how we can develop this ability for ourselves. So cool. I don't know about you, but I talk to my plants all the time. Sometimes they talk back, but keep in mind they don't talk English. They talk in a different language, and that's what we have to open our minds and our thoughts to, of different forms of communication. It's on a different level, a different frequency. And we also talk about how ultimately the plants are teaching us to reconnect with ourselves, and that's some real gold that Monica shares with us at the end of the show. That really is what it's all about, because we're all one, and coming home to yourself. And that's what the plants want us to lovingly do. And it's kind of cool in the beginning of the show. Monica talks to us about the situation that she was in with the whole COVID lockdown, because she's actually located in Australia. And wow, have you ever felt completely lost and not knowing what your next step should be? I'm sure you have at some point in your life. And how do you deal with uncertainty? So Monica and I actually, a good chunk of the beginning of the show, that's what we're talking about because it was quite relevant at the time. So before we get into all the cool plant science and how to talk to plants and all that stuff, she talks to us about how to trust and the feelings of uncertainty and vulnerability and how to take direction and the power of being connected and grounded in the earth when you don't know what the heck to do and what to really hold on to for a lifeline. It's a super powerful segment. And again, that's at the beginning, which I took a lot of time with her to really unpack that because I think it's extremely helpful and relevant to a lot of things in our lives. So enjoy the show. If you want more information about the power of sound, I'll just direct you over to episode 73 with my friend, another pioneer, Ian Morris. That's episode 73 on sound and frequencies and his amazing work of listening to Smile, which I also have on my website. And remember, if you want to support me in the show, the best way to do that is to share the show. Post it on your social media. Tag me at FitAmyTV so I can see you and I can connect to you and I can give you a big virtual hug and kiss. And I'll put you on my social media as well. And of course, leaving a quick iTunes review. It is the way us podcasters basically get paid, and it's super appreciated. But most importantly for me, it's so I know I'm helping you. And there's someone out there listening, and we're in this together. Okay, so enjoy this amazing episode, and I want to know what you think about it with Dr. Monica Gagliano. Monica, welcome to the show, and share with us where you are right now.
Thank you, Amy, for having me. And right now I am in Perth, which is on the west coast of Australia. And it's been a journey to get here, so...
I can't even imagine what's happening to you in Australia. As we're recording this, it's the beginning of 2022. You guys have certainly been in the world news. So do you want to share with us anything that's really kind of predominant in your life right now? What's going on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you probably know, we've been in a complete isolation from the world for 2 years. And but the isolation was also internal, so you couldn't go from one state to the other. And so Western Australia, which is isolated by nature, you know, there is a big desert between the west and the east side of Australia, and Western Australia it became pretty much impossible to get to. Like the state closed its border for 2 years. And so I was hoping to get back to Perth, where my puppy dog is and my part of my family is, and beautiful friends. And I was planning to come back for Christmas. And then on the 24th of December, so just the day before Christmas, my pass got revoked. So I was ready to go to the airport, and instead I found myself in my van. Fortunately, I have a van that is decked out so I can sleep in it. And I'm not going anywhere except in my van. And so that was a bit interesting, especially at that time of the year. It's not really a good time to ask your friends, can I crash at your place? You know, it just feels a bit weird. And so I was like, okay. And there was a lot of tension in general, because I don't know what the situation is in the US, but here for every move that you make, you have to have a test of some kind. Wow. So, you know, there are queues, like people are queuing since like earlier hours in the morning to get their little test, so that then maybe they can get to see their loved ones. And you can imagine, just before Christmas, that was like nightmare. So I did have my test, but they never sent me the results in time, because so it was total tragedy. And but of course, as always, tragedy and comedy are, you know, go well when hand in hand. And in this case, yeah, it looked like a tragedy, but then it turned out to be quite comical. So a few months earlier, because I've been looking for land. Actually, when I was having a chat with Paul Check, we talked about a project that I'm envisioning, and I'm gonna have to ground this year. And part of the project requires the land to host it, and the land that is a co-creator of the work. And so I was looking at this land, which would have been, it is still beautiful and perfect. And for some reason, you know, when you have a conversation with a stranger and they're telling you, in this case, this was the landlord owner, and he was just showing me around when I went and looked for the land. This is months before Christmas. And he's just showing me around and, you know, telling me about the land, telling me about the buildings on the land and the creek and the forest. And vaguely in the back of my mind, I remember him mentioning that there was a little cottage on the property. And I had this memory that he said something like, yeah, the people that lives in the cottage will leave around Christmas time. So I thought, I don't know if I remember this right, but I'm just gonna call him and see what happens, right? So I'm way up north, and I just sent him a message saying like, I don't know if I recall correctly, but is the cottage on your property available for rent? And he replied straight away, and he was like, Monica, perfect timing. You know, like, yeah, the people moved yesterday, and I already have 2 other couples that would like to rent the place, but if you want it, it's for you.
Wow.
And I know. So it's like, I'm in my van, completely like, oh, I'm supposed to fly away, and instead I'm stuck here. And here is this man saying to me, yeah, when are you coming? And I'm like, now.
Right.
I'm driving down, like, now. Is that okay? And he was like, yeah, sure, come, and we'll be waiting for you. So I found myself on this land with, as you know, because we tried to have this conversation a few times, and there was no Wi-Fi, no phone reception on the land, very remote, in the middle of, you know, beautiful forest up in the mountains, and yeah, really isolated. But it was exactly what I needed. I needed to be in a place that was absolutely pristine, and this place is. And just connecting with the land and all of the other beings that are on the land, and be able to have the space not to worry about anything. So this is how I spend my Christmas, New Year kind of period. And, you know, very antithetical to what most people spend that time of the year like, because, you know, I wasn't surrounded by people celebrating, you know, family or connection. I was celebrating connection, but with a much bigger family, the family that is, on the land, like the trees and the animals. I had beautiful encounters and beautiful moments of like clarity. And so, yeah.
Good Lord, what a Christmas gift.
I know, it was totally a beautiful, and what happened last year was really intense, as it was for many. And my main qualm from last year was that I just was finding it really hard to ground. Like I tried and I was doing my best, obviously, as everyone else is doing, but it was really difficult to ground. And I moved 3 times.
Wow.
I had to.
In 1 year?
Yeah. Wow. And at the beginning of just a year ago, so the very beginning of last year, I ended up in hospital for an emergency surgery out of the blue. So, it was a full-on year. Whoa. And then I couldn't find my grounding. And then this was the gift. I was instead of flying, which is again is like ungroundedness.
Literally.
It was like, no, you're not flying anywhere. You're driving to this place, and you're gonna go there and stay on your own, but really surrounded by this beauty. And this is gonna heal you, and this is gonna ground you. And so within like a week or two, I was so at peace. I was so like, finally, grounded. I can breathe, and I can see what I'm doing, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I can see that I'm okay with that.
You felt it, yeah. That's really interesting. I bet numerologically, that was a 9 year for you, because that's the year of a hermit and a growth cycle of your year. So you were probably a 9 that year. I'm in a 9 year right now for me. This is a 9 year, and because it goes by your age and your birthday according to the year, the date of the year. Super interesting. So that was a hermit year for you to just introspect and go within and really cultivate you. How beautiful.
And I ask the land all the time. It's like, what am I doing here?
Right.
What would you want? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And almost every day, I would sit, I would have my little practice, my meditation, and I would look out, and the land would always be the same. It would like, just let go. And I'm like, but I am
same answer.
Go.
Yeah, same answer.
And then next day I go back for more, and it's like, just let go. And I'm like, but I am. And it was like that every day. Until
when did it stop answering that when you finally did? So I'm assuming it stopped answering that same answer when you actually did let go. You thought you were letting go, but you weren't letting go, so it kept telling you the same thing.
Or there is always a bit more to let go of. When you're like, I've done it. And it's like, I don't think so. There is more.
Yeah, can't fool us.
That's right. And then, it was amazing because, as you know, then suddenly things start moving, and you start meeting people that just even a week before there was no way you were ready to meet. And through those meetings, you either reframe, learn to turn things around, and just new perspectives enter, and you see the same things that before was like, no, it needs to be this way, turns itself, and it's like, oh, actually, it doesn't need to be this way. It can be this other way, and it's actually even better. And I love it more. So it's been this process.
So tell us, I just think before we move on from this topic, that this is going to be very helpful for people, because tell us, Monica, then in your experience, like what got you through the pervasiveness of having to just keep trusting and being patient when you weren't seeing evidence of any answers, anything happening? Because a lot of people are feeling or felt the way that you felt, of just so stuck and lost and like looking for something to ground themselves and hold on to, and a sign and divine guidance. And they feel like they're not getting it. What was your thought process, or your logos, or your affirmations, or whatever, or your commitment that kept you doing your prayers in the morning, asking the land, keep showing up until finally things started moving? Like what was your thought process that kept you going in that?
Well, when I didn't connect in that way, when I didn't ask, when I didn't sit and pray, basically, like for some guidance and support, when I didn't do that, and there were plenty of days when I was like, I'm not doing this, I can't do this, then like I ended up in tears, feeling totally sorry for myself and poor me, you know. And then of course I was watching myself in that way, and it was like, but this is not who I am. I haven't come here to be a victim. Nobody has come here to be a victim. And so it's like, okay. So then you find and for me, because I was isolated so much, there was like, what else would you like to do? You know, what else is here to do? You can't do anything, you know. So I went from living in a beautiful, at the beginning of last year, I was living in this beautiful cottage, and there was like, we had a lot of ceremony going on, a lot of gathering, reading poetry, connection, dinners, and you know, like my house was like people coming and going, beautiful, rich, alive. And then it went from that place to a smaller place. The house was big where I moved into, and it was also in the middle of, you know, nowhere. But the feeling was smaller. So not as many things happened, not as much activity occurred. And then from there I moved, you know, I basically moved out of there to end up on a land which was beautiful and open, but in terms of activities with other humans, it was even more restricted because I couldn't even make it. Yeah. But it was good because it just showed me how, of course, our centeredness and our groundedness doesn't come from others. It cannot come from others. We need others. And connection and, you know, feeling supported by a community is very important. But especially at these times, I think that we need to find our own groundedness, our own center. And if we can't find it, then we ended up in tears like me. But,
like us all.
That's right. But then when you start engaging with this, like, it's basically a surrender. That's what you arrive to. It's like, I just basically cannot do anything else except being here and sit here and ask this place, please help me. And they always do. I know that from my plants, but the land in general, the country always respond if you're listening. So yeah, it was really empowering, because in the surrender you let go, and you feel nurtured. There is a part of you that in that moment feels like as if you've been held by a big mama, and you are being held by a big mama, in fact. And it gives you that sense of like, okay, I can do this. And what I really learned is that the main anxiety comes exactly from wanting and thinking that we need to know, we must know what's happening next, what am I doing? And all of those questions which have guided our lives up to this point, or our society, I would say, at least in the West, up to this point. We always know what the target is, we always know what the goal is, and you know, there is always a plan, and instead it's like no plan, no target, no goal, and not even knowing where you're going. Are you okay with that? If you're not okay with that, it's time to learn to be okay with that.
Yeah. And you know, and I've mentioned in many of my episodes that, you know, what's happening with this pandemic is, in my opinion, the Great Awakening. You know, for many of us, this is really what the point in humanity where we're here to really get that, you know, to really understand the big leap, the giant, you know, trust fall, you know, of like, okay, no clue, but I'm jumping, you know. And to your point about asking that question every day, I've been in a similar situation with the pandemic, very isolated, the whole deal, praying every morning, asking the question, please tell me what the hell's going on, what you want me to do, all that stuff. And like you, what I learned, just to share with the audience to hopefully be helpful, is I kind of get the message of when you keep asking the question, you're not trusting that we've answered it. You know, that was kind of what was like, okay, you've asked it from an open, loving heart. So we're going to answer you. So let it go. The answer's coming. Move on. You know, like so it was like what you did. Finally, I got to the point of, it wasn't that I gave up. It was just more like, okay, I gave up that tactic of you're going to tell me right now what the answer is, which is really what my cognitive brain wanted to know. And instead, it forced me to kind of, all right, well, I got to make the most of where I am. What do I like about this situation? And just kind of almost like get out of my own way and just follow things that were right in front of me that interested me. And then eventually they were like little breadcrumbs of a trail that led me down this way, that way. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe this is part of the plan. You know, like I started realizing, okay, I think I am being answered. All right. Because I kind of got off the broken record of, why won't you tell me what the hell, you know, all that.
So that's right. And also I think that, and I'm sure you probably had the same feeling, and many people have the same feeling. Once things start moving as we perceive them, then it's easy to look in hindsight. And this is actually an easy and useful exercise that I do with myself when I get myself caught in this little corner of like, it's not comfortable. I don't know what to do. And the exercise is this, and the land reminded me many times, and the plants reminded me many times. And it's like, have we ever not answered? You know, if like I do the same that you do, the answer is already been given, and I'm just having to let itself show itself up. It's already showing itself up. I just not seeing properly, but I will eventually see properly. But also, has there ever been a time when the answer was not given?
Yes,
the answer was always given. Otherwise, how would you be here? You are here because of a series of answers that have been taking you and literally, carrying you here. And it wasn't because of your question; it was because of the answers that you are where you are. And even as a humanity and as a global situation, it's because of all of our the answers that we are looking for that we are going to wake up.
And this is what we're going to get into with you sharing your amazing work with us, because you're going to explain to us how, and I don't want to jump ahead too much, but that you're going to explain to us how the plant kingdom communicates, which is in a different way than what we're used to. So to the point of this discussion, we have to be cognizant and aware of this different communication medium so we can pick up the communication. And it's not going to, like in a prayer, I don't know, like I've thought like, okay, when I ask the question, immediately the thought's going to pop in my head with the answer. Like that's not necessarily how Spirit communicates with you. You know, sometimes it's going to be a week later, a month later, with a sign you see when driving down the road at, 11 o'clock in the morning. It's, oh my God, that's it, or whatever. Like you just don't know when exactly the answer is going to come. And this is why I'm so thrilled to have you on the show, because you're going to educate us to this area of how the animal plant kingdom communicates in different ways. And it doesn't make it any inferior or less effective than the human way of communicating. So fascinating. But before we get to that, I need to mention on this topic that your website actually mentions a quote right there. Not all those who wander are lost. So that's to your point about what you're saying, that you are quite the wanderer, but you've never really felt lost, right?
Oh, I feel lost when I don't remember who I am.
Okay.
Right? When I fall asleep and I think that I'm just this little separate unit that doesn't have anything to do with anybody else, anything else, and I'm isolated, and which is what COVID is in the extreme highlighting. COVID is highlighting the extreme idea and mindset that we have been living with, that we are all separate and isolated. Now we are experiencing that idea. But also what is also showing us is that actually you can try to be as separate and isolated as you want, and it won't work. As we've seen it, a pandemic works exactly on that idea that you can't really, it can't be a pandemic if it can be stopped and isolated. A pandemic is designed to be pervasive. And so COVID is amazing because, and of course I'm not playing small, like the pain and all of the dying and all of that, which is in a way also part of life, and is also a lesson on death and life are one and the same, so they must come together.
Tough lesson.
Yeah, and our society, again, especially in the West, has a very, very big issue with death. Like, we don't like death, and we don't understand it. We don't want to understand it and appreciate it as well. You know, things must die, you know.
Yep.
So, but well, I lost track now.
You were just talking about how you've only felt lost when you felt disconnected from who you really are.
That's right.
Which is a great point.
That's right. And you know, the moment you do connect with your joy, you know, and it sounds so cliche, but it's true. It's whatever it is that you are really love doing, and it doesn't have to be something that, it must be some serious endeavor, useful to society or useful to someone or something. Yep. It can be just something that you love. It could be like I don't know, I love singing, and I'm gonna sing every morning from now on because this is giving me joy. You don't know what that does to your life, and you know, it might actually then bring those prayers to fruition because you are in that moment open. And yet, you know, if you're doing something like, I love singing and I'm gonna sing every morning, you're not doing it because you're expecting anything. You're doing it just because it gives you joy. But in that moment, you're surrendered, which means that then there is space for the unknown, I guess, the things that we don't know that they're coming for us. They are awaiting for us to show up. And to create that space is not easy because we get caught into the idea that we have to know and we have to do things. And in that sense, connected as well with your question is, you know, the plants are amazing teachers of this because they take their time. And we are not so good at taking a wider perspective and realizing that there are many layers to existence, which is not just the experience right now, what I'm having right now. It's like that experience is filtered through so many conditionings that most likely the experience that you're having right now is not even real. In the sense, it's not really reflective of who you are. It's reflective of the conditioning and the ancestral line. Where did you come from? What was the experience of your parents and grandparents before that, you know, that brought you here? And those are still playing inside us. We are made of them as well. And unless we bring them to awareness, then they keep playing on us, and we keep doing things and get concerned and worried about stuff that is not even relevant to our life. In my case, for example, you know, my dad is, and you know, especially from his background, so I know that he's also probably my grandparents and their parents. You know, there was this generation of like, if you work hard, you get, life rewards you if you work hard.
Same.
And you know,
same with me.
And hey, I am a hard worker. I love, when I love what I'm doing, I work really hard.
Sure.
But the love what I'm doing needs to be there. And for those generation, a lot of the time was a sense of duty. I have to. Absolutely. And if you don't work hard, then you're not being a good person.
Useless.
That's right. That's right. That's a good word. And instead having to deconstruct that conditioning, for example, which of course is totally embedded in here. And if I think about earlier on in my career, I worked really hard just for the sake of like, you have to be good, you have to perform, you have to, you know, you have to be useful and contribute. And contribute at the top of the best that you can do, you know. So always striving for that. And then, you know, if I look at the second part of my career, I worked actually much harder than I've ever did, but it was a different kind of working hard. It was a working hard out of like, I'm on a mission, you know, instead of like, I've got duty. It is more like I'm on a mission, and the mission comes from my heart and it's pulling me forward. So I have to do everything as I can because this is a privilege. But it's not a privilege just because it's something special that happens to me. It's a privilege that we all have when our heart calls and it's like, this is what you come to do. This is what you love doing. And finally, you're doing it. So we're going to conspire to give you everything and all the support. And then suddenly it looks like life happens like magic and all these
miracles. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Strange meeting, things that they look like that's impossible. How could that have it happen? But that's life.
That's so beautiful and encouraging. I love it so much. It's so yeah. I'll just add that I know a lot of people struggle with the well, the common term now is like, self-care and self-love. And like you mentioned about wanting to just sing and without judgment and just letting yourself do it. And for me, it's like letting myself not work and
That's right.
maybe paint and do some art, or God forbid, just go to the beach for a few hours and sit there. It's something I have to admit, it's not easy for me. I am just like born and bred a workaholic for my value, for my contribution. I get major issues feeling guilty, not working, because I feel very fortunate with my life. And there's so many people that suffer, and oh my God, I got to help. And it's a struggle for me. I still vacillate a little bit. I'm getting better. But I understand very well this thing that many of us, and I've said even in my story that I've shared with people growing up in New England with the Puritan work ethic. Sounds like you had it too. My family, workaholic, nose to the grindstone, pay your dues, keep going, blah, blah, blah. And, don't have the luxury of feeling what, God forbid, what you want to do, but anything else is really lazy and indulgent. So still trying to reprogram my brain to allow myself what I feel is, I don't want to say indulgent, but lazy. I don't know, just kind of, well, maybe indulgent. But what I'm starting to learn, Monica, is that that's the plane where spirit and consciousness lives.
That's right.
That's why we want to do it. And it's because you're getting on the frequency of that beautiful vibe. You're jumping on that boat to ride that wave that then, like you said, leads to the divine synchronicities and the connections and the magic. Otherwise, you're just not on the right boat. You're just paddling up the river all the time in the struggle. So it's not easy, but I get it. I know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
That's right. And I guess, it's actually really hard. It's really hard work to go against the current. Mm-hmm. It's really hard work not to be on your boat. And it's just that you don't know until you get onto your boat. And then it's like, oh, okay. And it doesn't mean, because, and I have the same, I had it for a long time. I had to make an actual conscious, agreement with myself that I will, if I felt guilty or lazy for taking time to just have a walk on the beach or read a book, it's like, what?
Yep. A nonfiction book.
That's right. That's right. Mm-hmm. A book that was not related to my work. And
a fiction book. A fiction book. A fiction, like a fake, not a study book.
Just a story, just for the sake of the beauty of reading, that's like, the idea of guilt, laziness, being, and not grateful for what you have. We are wasting your time. It's like, okay, I'm going to waste time. I'm going to make an agreement that there is time to be wasted. And so I'm going to waste time. I'm going to have that experience. And the thing is that, of course, is actually, at least this is what I've noticed, and I think it might be true for many people. When you are working with the first model, which is actually what the world has been working on, and you are actually never really fulfilling who you are, and you're kind of working on someone else's ideals, and these ideals are not someone in specific, but it's a collective societal ideal. Like there is a societal norm that's what we are aiming at, but those norms are changing, and they've changed over the time forever and ever. So of course they're not, because they're not in essence, they don't really exist. They are flexible. We made them up.
Yeah, so, it's a mind virus. It's a meme, and it's externally oriented as opposed to being internally oriented. So you're living according to an external. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And of course, as soon as this changes or anything threatens that, then of course your entire idea of who you are is threatened.
Which is what's happened now. People
That's right,
questioning the
because
whole thing. Yep.
that's right, because it's like, but I did work hard. I did put my nose down. I did do all of the things. I was a good person. Yeah. So why would this happen to me? And it's like, that's right, because you were a person, not the human being that you are. And person, the original, the original meaning of the word comes from, Etruscan time, and then the Roman and the Greeks also used it. And the person was referring to the mask, the actor, and the mask that the actor wears on the theater.
The
so
persona.
If you think of,
persona.
Yeah, that's right. So if you think of that, it's like, we've been playing good actors. We've been playing according to that play that was, we decided, or the tragedy that we decided we were going to play as a society. But yet, that's not who you are. And so then when the play finishes and it's like, okay, the curtains is off now and all the actors can go off and be yourself, the actors don't know what to do because they have identified with the acting that they were doing. And so this is what I think is challenging us now as a, as a collective in general. And but then again, if you give yourself the time to waste time and not feel guilty, and if you do, just do feel guilty and whatever, then you might have an opportunity to see that you are not that actor, first of all, and then that there is an essence in you that actually has a lot to give. And it can be in many forms, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be earth-shattering discoveries. It doesn't have to be that you end up on the front of Time magazine. It doesn't have to be any of what the media are portraying is success. It doesn't have to be success at all. It doesn't have to be anything. As long as it makes you feel that when you finish the day, you feel like, that was good. You know? And I think that when you find that, then at least I know for myself, whenever I enter in that space, then I work much harder than ever. But it's not even hard work. I give myself to it because I want to, I choose to, because it's what I've come to do. It's different.
Super inspiring. So let's then get into your work, because wow, you are truly a pioneer who has just contributed so much to our knowledge about the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom and all of that. You have changed the paradigm scientifically as to what we can think about as far as really what are plants, and what is their capacity to communicate, and if they communicate, and having a respect, a reverence, a relationship, all your work. So can you give us in a nutshell how you would explain to someone what you do, and basically in a nutshell what you've discovered in your work to date?
So I started working with plants, and I've been working with plants now for just over 10 years. And I'm not a botanist or a plant physiologist. Those are the people who really know plants scientifically. So I'm actually, I was trained as a marine ecologist, and I worked with animals. And so my take on plants was from that perspective. I came in looking at plants as we do look at animals. And when you look at animals, as I did, and you look at behavior, you ask certain questions in terms of how do they communicate to each other? How do they learn from the experiences that they are having? And how do they share all of these learnings? And do they remember what happened yesterday? And so all of those questions in the animal realm are pretty common. And we have asked those questions for pretty much all species that we can look at. When I moved on to plants, I realized that those questions were not asked. And not only that, but it seemed like they couldn't be asked because they were kind of a bit of taboo. It's like, why would you ever consider even asking? Of course, the answer, we already know the answer. The answer is no. And it's like, but that's not a very scientific approach, because it's like, have you even checked? If you haven't checked, then you simply don't know the answer. You don't know that the answer, it might be no, they can't do this or that, but unless you checked, you don't know it. So, and at the same time, this work came out from me, from my own personal experiences with plants themselves, and my own internal crisis with my own work as a scientist. And so I stopped working with fish, which was my animal collaborator, and started working with plants. And initially I was just looking at communication, because that was something that I was doing already with fish. And I was interested in seeing how plants communicate. And so, to my surprise, some people had already started working on these in terms of chemistry and light. And so we knew already at the time that, they release volatiles that can, signal to other plants what's happening. And because I was coming from the animal background, it was interesting to me that it's like, but in the animal world, and we of all species know this very well, like sound is pervasive, is everywhere. We use it all the time. We are listening, we are producing it. We even get it to the point that we make music with it, so. And I think nature in general is a bit obsessed with sound. So
from what I understand, it's the original creative element. At first there was sound.
Right.
It was sound
that's
first,
right.
Before
that's
light.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So it just felt like, so this entire system, this entire experience is obsessed with vibration and frequencies and acoustics, and we haven't looked at plants in this way. So I was starting to question whether, that was possible. And I did a couple of experiments, and what I found is, like, not only, of course, it's possible, but plants are not only emitting their own sounds, which initially I recorded using very awkward and very cumbersome equipment in a basement, in a lab. It was laser technology, very difficult to move. Like, you can't move it, so you have to take the plants to it. And it's not ideal, but it made the point. It was useful to make the point, like, well, we are actually picking up sound coming from these plants, so they can do it. Wow. And not only that, but like, they of course are listening as well. So they're able to detect different frequencies and different sounds in their environment. And then not only that, but depending on those frequencies and what those sounds are actually referring to, what they will respond in different ways. So then you see the chain of action is like, I'm producing sound, I'm listening to sound, I'm responding to the sounds in my environment. And potentially then I produce sounds, I listen to sound, and I'm responding. And so suddenly the system becomes very complex, and it's like, okay, and they're responding to sounds. In my work, I was showing how plants can detect the source of water based on just the sound of water underground. Even if in my experiment, there was no water, there was just a recording of the waters, but the plants knew what that was. So
wait, did you trick them? Did they think it was water, or did, like, just because of the sound? You said there wasn't actually water.
Yeah.
So they were going only on sound.
To the water that wasn't there, but the sound of the water was there. Yeah. And then, other colleagues have demonstrated similar ways how plants can respond to the sound. So there is no other but the sound of an herbivore chewing on someone's leaves. The next door plant, just on the sound, so there is no herbivore around, but just on the sound, it will start responding as the herbivore is actually there. Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and the same with bees. It's like there is this is more recent study from a group in Israel where they showed how the plants will increase the level of sugar in its flowers at the sound of the bees. And of course, when the bees is approaching, it's useful because you want to be very attractive. But this response happens even when the bees is not there, but the sound of the bee is provided. Wow. So the plants know exactly what those sounds are. And what that means as well is that these sounds have meaning. They represent something. And so then who is giving this meaning? Who is giving meaning to the experience that these beings are having? And of course, I my work also extended on, because we are entering the cognitive realm, you know, and often from a human-centric perspective, we think that cognition in the cognitive realm refers to things that have to do with the brain. But no, cognition is a big umbrella that contains many processes, and processes are not related to traits or property. You don't have to have a brain or a certain thing to be able to do X. If you're doing X in different ways, you're still doing X. So within the cognitive realm, you have, you know, all the processes for learning, for remembering, all of those, many of the behaviors are under that umbrella. And so I started testing as well the ability of plants to learn from their experience and remember what they've learned. And so one of the famous studies is with the mimosa, where the mimosa remembers an experience and he learns to ignore it.
That's a type of plant, mimosa.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, this plant is actually called the sensitive plant, and because it moves and it closes the leaves at a time speed that we, with our eyes, without any help from technology, can see.
Kind of like the praying mantis, like.
Yeah, it folds. The other one, Drosera, the Venus flytrap. That's the one that you're referring to. Yeah. So these are few plants have these responses that we can see with our eyes. So they're very good because we can. It's kind of like gives us the feeling that they are closer to the animal world than many other plants, right? Because they're moving. Because we are obsessed with movement at a particular time scale. Plants move, but they move at a different time scale, so we can't see it and we can't perceive it until we come back a month later and say, oh, that plant went from there to there. It's like, oh, so they do move. So yeah, so in my work I use, for example, with mimosa, we were able to demonstrate how these plants is able to experience, basically decide whether the experience is worthwhile the effort of responding to or not. And because the experience that I put it through was scary at first, but there was no consequences. So it's almost like if I say like, boo, you know, the first time I do it, I might scare you, but if I continue doing that, it won't, you'll be like, yeah, well,
you
whatever.
learn.
That's right.
Okay.
So these plants basically showed us that they can learn really quick, and then not only that, but they remember their experience, so that learning is remembered. And if you go back a month later and you try the same trick, the trick doesn't work because
so that shows an intelligence. That's an intelligence.
That's right. Nice. And then I also did another experiment which is relatively famous as well, and is inspired by a famous experiment done in animals, and that's the Pavlovian dog.
Oh, sure.
And, yeah, so Pavlov ringing the bell, and the dog learning that the bell comes before dinner, and so every time Pavlov ring the bell, the dog is like, oh, dinner is coming.
Salivates. Yep.
That's right. Yep. And he starts salivating even before dinner is even in the scene.
Just because of the bell. Okay, it associates the bell with food and as a physiological response.
Precisely, yeah. So I set up the same kind of experiment where instead of the dog, I had pea plants. And they are able to do the same trick.
Come on. Wait, what?
Yeah.
What happened?
So they're able to, like, for dinner, of course, for a plant, dinner is light. So I had blue light, and instead of a bell, which I did try, but I wasn't able to regulate that enough, to control it enough. So
the pitch and the tone and all, you have to get that sound exactly the same every time. It
was just too much. So I used a different cue, but the concept is the same. So I used a little fan that would blow hair. And so of course we tested the fan on its own, doesn't do anything. The plant doesn't care. So then you put the fan always coming before the dinner, before light, just the same as with Pavlov the dog. It's like, before the dinner, you ring the bell. Before the light, the dinner for the plants, you have the fan on. And so these are tiny little fans, and the plant was in a maze. And so I would move the fan and the dinner, the light, depending in different ways, so that it was unpredictable. And the plants will have to, if the plants was able to learn and associate like the dog does, it would have to be able to go to the fan, expecting the light to come from that direction. And
so
that's
move
exactly
toward the fan, looking for the light. Okay.
That's right. And they of course, they're able to do that. And
that's what happened.
Yeah, and I also did the opposite. I taught the plant basically the fan is actually it does tell you that in terms of a sequence, it does tell you that the light is coming afterwards, but the light is not going to come from this direction where the fan is. It's going to come from the opposite direction where the fan is. So which is a bit more complex, because it's like you have to associate, fan and light are connected, but they're connected in a different way. And this time the connection is like they are in opposite physical direction instead of being paired together. And the plants were like, yeah, we got this. Yeah.
You didn't trick them.
No.
That is so cool. Well, I'll just share with people that what you've discovered in your work, that plants have very real and clear systems of communicating, and just because they're different than human systems, which in our limited egocentric nature, we just associate, if other things don't operate the way we do, then they're inferior or they don't happen. Like, for example, like you said, like having the brain-centric idea of memory, that we know that the memory is not stored necessarily in the brain cells. It's stored in all over the body and consciousness and all the cells. So some of the limitations of conventional science that you've turned on its head is that, hey, we can't judge other species based on just us. Like, we're not the benchmark, like, hello, that's the problem right there. So you've established that plants and these other life forms do most certainly have language and communication. I actually remember in grade school being taught that one of the main things that differentiates us human beings, and therefore makes us superior, is that we are unique in that we have language, unlike other creatures, and learning and all that stuff. So that's completely thrown out the window. And I'd like you to talk about, you've said in your work that plants have their own agendas, they have their own ideas, they have desires, they have ways of expressing themselves, they certainly have behavior, and they can make choices. And that's how you've defined intelligence, is the ability to actually make choices. So would you like to expand on that, to educate us a little more about, oh my God, what, plants make decisions, plants make choices, plants have agendas? What are you talking about?
Yeah, the experiments that I mentioned, so when I did them, I was also in my own kind of personal life interacting with plants at a much deeper level, both shamanically and in the garden. So but at the time, because I was going through my own transformation as a being, I didn't mention anything about this to my colleagues. So I just did the research and published the research, and I wanted to make sure that the research was done properly, and it was in a way was going through the proper channels, right? But then when I wrote the book That Spoke the Plant, that's when I actually was able to share that this entire work was already done in collaboration with the plants, and some of the experiments were given to me by the plants themselves. And so from my perspective, of course they have an agenda, because they recruited a human collaborator. It just happened to be me, maybe because I was listening. There's nothing really special about this. It's more like they recruited me because I was listening, and I think that it was timely, and they knew that. It was like, we needed to hear this, we needed to learn this, we needed to know this. And now, if I look 10 years back, 10 years later, this entire area is almost not that unique and special anymore. To me, I see so many others already talking about these. There are so many initiatives about plants. Like there is a full-on revival. How many books have been written about plants in the last few years?
It's becoming more
totally
mainstream.
like
less woo-woo, that's for sure.
That's right. There was none of this like when I started. And if anything, I share this in my book as well, but I was looked at as if I was doing some woo-woo thing. And,
well, a lot of your papers weren't published. You were extremely published, and a lot you just got like no.
That's right. That's right. So this, and I'm very happy that this is no longer the case. It doesn't really need to happen anymore. Although it is part of my character, I think, like just the way in which my life unfolds is because of this very reason, my job on this is done. So, when I was working with my fish, I also did similar stuff. Like I was doing things that were new, that hadn't been really tried before. And once they were accepted, so then I published them. Once they were accepted and other people started using them and started becoming like, oh yeah, this is good, my energy just retracts. It's almost like I'm not interested in digging and doing more of the same. I move on to the next thing that needs to be the next box that requires opening. And so with the plants is the same. And I gave 10 years of my life opening this one box, and although I still obviously contribute and stuff, but my actual heart is no longer here. So I've already moved to the next box to be opened. And so it's interesting for me as well, because I know that some people are only just arriving to my work.
And it's really not mainstream yet either. I mean,
that's right. But for me, it's like, yeah.
Well, we're going to have to get to what you're getting to, but I do want to help share with people a little more on your experience with plants, because again, it is such a wait a minute, what did she just say? The plant told her how to write the book? Like, that's just like, huh? So could you just maybe just share a little snippet of what you mean by that? Like, Monica, how exactly did the plant tell you to write the book? Okay. Like, what is she talking about? Like, can you give us something to grab onto there, tangible?
Yeah. And actually, it's a shame I don't have my diaries here, because I just moved. But there are as I said, while I was working in the lab and in my science as the professional scientist doing the science, I was also exploring the plants in my garden and shamanically through ceremonial work of all kinds. And I ended up at one point going to do some work in again, even this is when I went, nobody was going, but now it's so mainstream that it's not funny. I went to Peru working with a curandero there for a while, and I did a process called the dieta, which is a time of, again, isolation and prayer. Really,
it's like a vision quest.
Yeah, kind of, but you are doing it with the plant. So you are the curandero or the healer or the maestro. They would give you a plant to work with, and much of this work, it doesn't have to be even psychedelic, just to make it clear. Like, this could be a plant as simple as the basil plant, or it could be any plant. It's just more like there is a methodology to enter in communion with this other, and through the process. And I didn't know what plant I was going to be working with. The curandero decided for me, and that's what he gave me, and that's what I worked with. And as I was, so you spend days and days and weeks in isolation with these, communing with these plants. And at one point, I remember very clearly, and that's why I mentioned my diary, because I remember keeping my diary during this dieta process. And at one point, I just felt as if I was as if someone was telling me what to write. So I started writing, but I knew it wasn't my ideas. So it's almost like I was listening to someone telling me, and then write this and do this and do that.
You were channeling.
So I started writing down, and without knowing what I was writing, until after a while I realized, whoa, this is an experiment. Are you kidding me? And you want me to, this is brilliant. How is it that I didn't think of this?
Wow.
And that experiment included, you know, like on my page, on my diary, you have like the diagrams of what I needed to do and how many times.
The instructions.
Yeah. That experiment is the Pavlovian pea.
Whoa.
That's
you can
right.
download it.
That's right. And not only that, but I can tell you that I've wanted to do that experiment, like ask that question for the associative learning before that, and a few years before that. And I kind of tried to design it myself, obviously. And I was using corn, sunflower seedlings, because I thought, oh, maybe I can get them to move one way, the other way. You know, that was how I was thinking. And then I tried it and it wasn't working. So I just kind of abandoned it and started doing something else in the meantime. Then I ended up going to Peru. So I wasn't thinking about this work at all. Then I ended up going to Peru and doing the dieta with this plant. When I got, you know, the instructions for this experiment, at one point the plant, after, you know, all of it is right there. And it's like, and then you can do this, and then you can do that, and then turn it around this way and do it this many times, and blah, blah, blah. Book the lab. God. And yeah, exactly. And then at the very end, it's like, oh, and by the way, almost like a little postscriptum, like a note at the end of the story. And it was like, oh, by the way, not sunflower, peas. And I'm like, okay. So of course I came back. When I came back home, I booked the space in the rooms, in the controlled environment rooms where I did the experiment eventually. And I set it up and I started doing it. And of course with peas, not sunflowers. And actually for the first 2 weeks, and this was a very, talking about hard work, as we were talking about before, this was a very extremely demanding experiment. I was basically there most of the day, and the day started, you know, 6 o'clock in the morning, and it wouldn't finish until like 6, 7 o'clock at night. And you had to be there constantly. So, you know, like, and you do it every day for weeks. So it was demanding. And after the first 2 weeks, I was looking at what was coming up as I don't think it's working, and it's a shame. And then of course I started thinking like, oh, you see, you thought that the plants told you what to do. And you thought that you were gonna, oh, you got instructions, and you know, and that part of my mind
imagined it. Yeah,
you made it all up and it's all rubbish, and look at this. It's like, what did you think that a plant told you how to do it? And so I was about to dismantle everything. I was about to like, okay, well, you know, I tried, and that's part of science, right? Okay, I asked the question, sure. I tried, and simply the answer is like, no, they can't do this. So I went in, and this was, you know, it was in our summertime, was boiling hot outside, and very sunny and bright, and the experiment happens in the dark and in a cold room, you know, because the peas grow at 16 degrees and like Celsius, and outside we had 40. So it was really like big difference. Both light and temperature were like different extremes. So I was going from one environment to the next, and I found myself in the dark thinking like, yeah, well, I'm just gonna turn on all the lights and I'm gonna dismantle this. It's a shame it doesn't work, right? And then a little voice said to me like, have another look. And I was like, I already know it's not working. Have another look. So I did, you know, peer inside my little mazes again, one more time. And again, I do not know how to explain this, but there was something that I couldn't not see until that moment. And suddenly, as I peeped in again, it was like so obvious. And the peas had been doing it all along.
What was it?
Well, I just couldn't see, because the baseline in my head, that was my expectation. So the baseline that was in my head was not right.
It wasn't what you were expecting, but you weren't seeing what was actually there, which was something, but just not what you thought. So you didn't see it.
That's right. So I could not see it. It's amazing. And then suddenly I could see it, and it's like, then once you see it, you cannot not see it.
Right.
So suddenly it was like, oh my God. And I remember that I was so close.
Oh my God. Isn't that life though? Life is like that.
I know. It was so close for this to never happen, or happen, who knows, with someone else some other time, because I think ideas like to jump around and go to people. So but that idea was about not to be born at all. And then there it was. And I remember it was a Sunday afternoon. I shared this in the book as well. It was a Sunday, and I went on Sunday on purpose, because I thought the uni, campus is quiet, so I can just clean up and open doors without bothering anyone else. And so I was there, like, I didn't know whether I was gonna cry. Well, I didn't know what to do with myself, so I was crying, laughing, jumping around, thinking like, wow. And the idea that there are things. How often does that happen? I was questioning for myself, is that how many times I think I'm seeing, but I'm not seeing anything.
Oh my God. Like I said, this happens all the time.
It's right in front of our eyes, and we cannot see it because simply we cannot. We have conditioning and ideas that says it's not there while it's right there. So,
wow.
So this is how they do it.
What a great story.
That's what I mean in terms of collaborations.
Beautiful.
It's a co-creation, and I feel very grateful.
Indeed, that's so fantastic. I mean, people have to really just think about that for a minute and like, geez, apply that to their lives, our lives. Like, how am I possibly doing this? But the thing is, it's tricky because we're not doing it on purpose. You're sitting there looking for what it is that you're hoping to see or looking for, or want to see the evidence of it, and in spite of ourselves, we can't see it sometimes. Like, that's just so interesting. And but I think the takeaway is that somehow, above all that, ultimately you stayed open to the little message that came through, like the little whisper, just look one more time, Monica, look a little closer, and then boom, the light went in, so thank goodness for that. That's beautiful. So you've mentioned that plants communicate through sound, through touch, chemistry, light, and that plants even have their own unique identities. In fact, you referred to plants as a someone, not a something. So, all right. Does that mean, Monica, in your opinion, that plants are all just that, a unique identity, like as in a person has a soul who's a unique identity? We're all humans, but we're unique. Are plants the same way? They all have unique identities, and therefore can we say souls?
This is a tricky question because I think that there is a human soul, which is how we are actually all connected anyway. And then there is the individual expression of that soul. And so the plants are not really different, because the human soul is actually not necessarily the human soul either, but it is. So we're entering in this space where the paradox is very present, but is actually exactly how it is. Like, for me, my experience is exactly how I can express it and understand it. It's like, yes, there is an individual soul for each plant, the same way as, yes, there is an individual soul for each human, as well as not. There is only the soul. And that can be, there is only the human soul as a humanity, as the plants of a particular species. And because, again, remember that humanity is made up of one species, but when we talk about plants, those are thousands of species.
Right.
So actually, they're more than thousands, but so even when we say plants, it's a very generic term that doesn't actually represent anybody in particular. So humanity as a species is just one of the many animals. Yeah. And if we put it in that context, then there is an animal soul maybe, and then there is a plant soul. And this comes back to Aristotle. He already identified that. But then again, is that distinction even really real at the end anyway? Because there is, to me, there is only really the one soul,
one source.
Exactly.
Like the
and
universe.
That's right. And that it just it spreads out, and it just expresses itself in different colors and forms, and that's what we are. But fundamentally we are the same stuff, and then we are expressing differently, and our individuality is important, because without it wouldn't be very fun. We would be like having a painting with no colors. It's just one.
Right.
Instead, the painting comes to life when you have all of the colors, and I think that's what life is doing, is just painting multiple colors, and the more colors the better, because it makes it for a more interesting painting. And but ultimately they're all paints, and they're all they're on the same canvas, and they're all doing the same.
So if individual plants can learn, and they have families, they communicate with each other, they have relationships with the insects, and they produce chemicals that will attract certain bugs to help pollinate their seeds and repel others, and they tell neighboring plants by certain chemicals if there's a dangerous predator in the area, and to communicate to each other. They communicate under the ground through the roots, in the air, in sound. I mean, all these things that you talk about. But how about, like, with this behavioral component, kind of to my point about individual personalities, and I do totally get what you're saying, but I'm just curious. I mean, are they like people in the regard of, like, some people are nasty, some people are more friendly? Like, are plants like that? Like, you found that some plants really have a personality. Like, this plant is nasty. And you said, like, plants pick people to do things. Like, have you found that they really have, like, very distinct characteristics among them?
For me, as my personal experience, definitely. And I couldn't,
that's cool.
I wouldn't have the scientific data to back this up, but then my personal experience does not need the validation of science, although I value and appreciate that system of knowledge, obviously. And like, I have met plants who are guardian of certain spaces, and sometimes they're very welcoming, and other times when you're not supposed to be there, they'll be like, go away, you're not supposed to be here. And especially here in Australia, this is very clear, because there are lots of places which are women's business only, or men's business only, and the land itself as well has got a voice. And so to be able to pay attention, deeply listening to these voices, and acknowledging that that we don't know, we don't understand our perspective. As I said with my experiments, like, we are not seeing everything, and actually what we think we're seeing might not be what it is.
So
and
crazy.
So these others who are very much wiser than we are, they've been here, they've known the little game of life for a little longer, quite a bit longer, especially the land. So yeah, when I hear voices, they say, like, not here. And it's not necessarily a voice that speaks in my head, but it's like feelings, and they're very clear. And I'm sure you had them, and many people have them. Whether they acknowledge them or not is a different story, but we all have them, because we are all the same bodies moving on the land. And so it's a matter of attuning that instrument, which is the physical, the body that we have. And then in some cases I had very clear like, you're not supposed to be here, go away. And I in some cases I was not able to take a step, like literally. Wow. I was like, I can't walk any further than this. And there is no barrier officially, physically, that should justify that, but it's very clear. In some cases I couldn't even look up. I was as if something was holding my head down. And It's like, you're not supposed to look up there. You're not supposed to connect. That space is not for you. And at the same time, there were places where I got taken in, even without me wanting to, like, I didn't necessarily had any particular desire to go into that spot over there. And I found myself walking to it. And I remember very clearly there was one place where I just, I felt like I was literally being pulled into this place. And I dropped on my knees and I started sobbing like there was no tomorrow. And, but again, it's like that land wanted me to feel that. And
Wow.
And so plants do that too. I had experiences where plants told me, like, we are not your medicine. Do not ever, ever, ever come here. I know. And I was like, okay, we don't work together. And others said, of course, like, so when are you coming? When are we having a chat again?
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So,
well, this is incredible because in my studies, you know, I've learned, you know, studying, you know, Native American wisdom and indigenous cultures and shamans and medicine men and women, that they always worked with the plants and the land and the elements. I mean, that was just a given. That was the relationship that they had to enable the tribes to continue to heal people. And they would say that they came across these medicines and different healing balms and chants and sounds and prayers and all these things because the plants told them. You know, the plants told them how to make the medicine. The plants would tell them what to do and how to make this poultice to put on someone's leg to heal it or whatever it may be. So this is a practice that's gone on from the beginning of humanity that unfortunately our modern, sophisticated, fancy, smancy culture has completely been disconnected with understanding and having a humility and a reverence and respect for this other species that, like to your point, has been here a lot longer than we have. They've obviously proved that they can survive evolution. I mean, funguses, bacteria, viruses have been here for millions of years, much longer than we have. They are a lot smarter in a lot of ways because we're on our way to the next extinction if we don't clean up our act. You know, so to your point that, you know, plants have always communicated with us. We've just unfortunately lost that ability. So you've referred to something, am I saying this right? The Oryngham?
Oryngham.
The Oryngham, yeah, the way that plants communicate. Can you just speak to that a little bit?
Oryngham was a word, the best way I can describe it is a word that was given to me by a plant. Again, I wasn't asking for it. It just, you know, it was given, and it was, it means thank you. Thank you for listening. And yeah, and it was given to me during it was during a dieta and during a very challenging ceremony. And yeah, and it was like the thank you for listening is acknowledging the opening of the conversation. And I don't, you know, you just said like, oh, our society has lost. I don't think we have lost this ability because it's actually so innate, so part of who we are, what everything is. Like we can think of ourselves as enclosed and solid and sealed and isolated if we want to. But as you know, like our body, like the skin, if we were really, you put paint on your skin and you die, you know, like the skin needs to breathe. The system is completely open. It just, the skin gives us this illusion, fortunately, thanks to the skin, to contain us so that we don't run around with our organs just slobbering everywhere. But, you know, the system is open. So these conversations have been going on because all these systems are open and they are in the making of each other all the time. So plants are making us all the time. We are making plants all the time, even just with the bare minimum of which is not a trivial thing, but of sharing oxygen and carbon dioxide. You know, we are making each other, and we are making each other's worlds all the time. So within that, I don't think we can't have lost anything. We just, I think we just made so much noise that we can't hear properly. But that's, as we've seen with COVID, actually, as soon as we go quiet a little bit, we can start hearing the rest of the world around us. And
they're just waiting for us to come home to the party.
That's right. Can you just be quiet for a little while so that you can hear others instead of always be the one talking? That's like, can you learn how to listen again instead of like having to talk? And have you actually got anything to say? Because if you don't have anything to say, maybe silence is good, And so, yeah, and there are, what I found at these, through these processes, which are very scientific in a way, because they have a very clear methodology of how to approach and how to go about them. I can see, and I had the experience myself of being, not just for my science, but actually being in places where plants was like, oh, and you use me for this. And I'm not a medical doctor. I don't know anything about medical uses of plants. I'm very interested in herbalism, but I'm not even an herbalist, So, and yet I have been many times, it's like, oh, you need me for that. Or during the dieta process, which is what I really love because of its methodology, I always ask the plants, like, so what are you for? And the plants always tell me, like, oh, I'm good for this and that. And during, just to give an example, a few years ago, I did a dieta with a plant who gave me instructions on what the plant was for, but also this is how you make my medicine. So go make it. So when I finished my process, I made the medicine according to the instruction that I was given. And then this medicine sat in my fridge for several years. And then it was still in my fridge when COVID started. I was in the US. Yeah, that's right. I was in the US traveling and I made a very, very quick return to Australia. It was just before everything shut down. And I just managed to get back in the country. I was quarantining and I was feeling good. And then 5 days later, I was down. Whoa. And suddenly, I had COVID at the very beginning. And it was pretty nasty. I think my feeling for what I'm observing is that the beginning was really nasty. Like, I think it was much stronger than what we are experiencing now. Maybe because we were not prepared, I don't know, but it was, anyway, here in Australia, because we are so far away from the world, we were still in the bubble of like, oh, nothing is happening. It's something that they got a problem over there, but it's none of our problems, we hadn't really clicked in yet that actually this is serious. Yeah. So I'm at home, still quarantining, and because on the property where I lived, we had an elderly man that was he's a really good friend of mine, but his health was already compromised. So I wanted to make sure that I was absolutely clear, because if I had COVID and I was gonna kill him, that wasn't gonna be good. God. So and 5 days in at home, I started getting sick, and then I was down, and within 2 days the plant were back, and the plant that I dieted, because the dieta is a way of creating a relationship that is not just in that moment, but is if the dieta is done properly, is a relationship forever, and then you become a collective, because the plants lives here. And so whenever
in you they stay in you. Yep.
That's
okay.
Right. So, and you don't have to keep taking them, it's just like the dieta process is for that, to create this bond. And then if it's done properly, the plant is there. And whenever that particular plant with those particular gifts is required, she will arrive, and you'll be like, you need me. And you know, that's me already.
Amazing. Oh my God.
So that's exactly what happened. Is like, I'm in bed, like almost dying, like couldn't breathe. And the plant came back and it was like, I already given you my medicine and this is what it's for. Whoa. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, go to the fridge, take me, and just, we do it this way. So this is how I never ended up going to the doctor, and I was sick. It was bad, but it's still, I was like, every 3 hours I was taking a teaspoon of this medicine that I made years before without knowing that, of course, there was no concept of COVID or anything. I was just like, oh, well, I'm just playing. The plant says I do this, I do this.
That's amazing.
Yeah. This has happened to me with other things, other plants who have given me instruction for other people. you know. So it's like, oh, you need this. And I, you know, it looks like, and I made this comment with friends many times, is like, it looks like I actually know what I'm doing. It's like, oh, Monica knows what you need. It's like, no, I have no idea. I'm just like literally the same way as, as I was explaining before, I was pulled to this place that dropped me to my knees.
Yeah.
Or the same way as some places say like, no, you don't come here. Is the same way as when the plant is like, literally, I feel like almost my body is getting moved, and I approach you and I'm giving you something, or I'm doing something that I don't understand. I don't know what that is. But then in the feedback that you're giving me, it makes sense.
But Monica, do those situations happen like in everyday life? I'm just trying to extrapolate this to the audience of like someone that's not going to Peru and doing a Gieta, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you know, like a plant medicine ceremony to really tap in. Like, are these things happening to you? Are you getting these downloads and instructions and communication just kind of in your everyday life, like on a Friday afternoon when you're watering the plants? Like, I mean, is this actually just happening like randomly?
Yeah.
These kind of things? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, but that hasn't always happened, right? Is this now because you're tapped in and you have that channel open? Like, how does the average person tap into this ability?
I think that for me, I think maybe I actually know that it was always there, but not just for me. It's always there for all of us.
Okay.
And as we said before, it's like the noise doesn't allow us to hear anything. And and so in a way, we need formal situation and environments that allows us to break that noise and find the silence.
Yes.
But
but it's there.
Yeah.
I think too, we got to trust it. Cause I know like with me, sometimes I'll doubt it. Like you had said in one of your things, like, oh, it was just me thinking that, but you can tell when you're channeling something coming through you, cause it's not coming from you.
It's a different texture.
Yes. There's a different like way of like, it's a thought that came from your brain as opposed to a thought that came into your brain.
That's right.
That's what I've learned. And to me, I think that's what I'm hearing you say, is that you've now really cultivated your skill at allowing that to come through. Like you've opened that road, so to speak, so it's a clear path. Whereas someone else, what you're saying is that road is there. You just got to kind of get all the crap out of the way. So
clear the track.
Road. Yeah.
That's right.
Right on.
That's right.
Encouraging.
And what happened is that, of course, I think then you're clearing the road, not just for these this relationship demands the road cleared, but by clearing the road, you're actually clearing the road to much more than just this relationship. So you're clearing the road to your own self, and you know, the relationship is guiding you back home to you.
Love it.
And so in the process of doing that, you're not just like, oh, and now I'm going to learn more about plants. I mean, that's cool. But you're actually, what you're doing is like, oh, now I'm going to learn about me, and I'm going to reconnect to myself, like my big self.
Indeed.
And that really is what the plants, I think, are after, because this is what we need to do now.
That's what it's all about.
You know, like this is why for me, this is why we are in the world, we are experiencing the world the way we are experiencing it right now. Is because we are not seeing properly.
It's the big wake up.
Yeah. So it's actually a very exciting time.
I totally agree. So Monica, as we're getting toward the end here, what do you think in a nutshell plants want humans to know?
That you're never alone. It's not possible. And that we are a collective. And the Dieta process in particular highlights that, because you enter a space where you consciously want to become a collective. And if you enter that space in that way, then you will be part of this collective, and which is beyond human, which also means that you have, as always in relationship, you have a responsibility as well. You know, it's not just about taking, actually it's always about giving first. So yeah, this
reciprocal, two-way.
That's right. Reciprocity, I think, is the key word, and also transcending reciprocity itself. Like in many of the languages here in Australia, the Indigenous languages, the word thank you doesn't exist. But it's not because they're rude people that don't thank you. It's because there is a very deep understanding that, at least this is how I understand it, there is a deep understanding that if you understand that you are part of, that you are a collective, that you are always in relationship, then you also understand that what you're receiving, it's also part of your giving. And so the reciprocity is intrinsic. You don't have to thank anything, because although you can feel very grateful, but you don't have to officially thank me, because it's part of my responsibility towards you as part of me to give. But at the same time, you have the same. So this giving and receiving is done without the formalities. It's done because there is a deeper understanding that actually this is what we are. Instead of like although thank you is a good word, but it kind of like it's on a much more superficial level in a way, where this can be. And I think that we're going there to this deeper space where we know inside that reciprocity is a mode of being, is not a thing that we do. Wow. Reciprocity is not like, oh, just because you gave me this beautiful thing, then now I feel obliged to give you this.
It's not tit for tat.
That's right. It's more like I do it because by giving to you, I'm giving to me. So yeah,
that's beautiful. That's really, really powerful. It's something I kind of meditate on. I love it. Well, I'll just say that, I've really cultivated my own relationship with the whole plant kingdom, and, just even the plants I have in my home, and, opening up my mind and awareness to communicating with them, both telepathically and from my heart. Particularly, I just started with something simple as watering them, certain plants that I'd be killing all the time. Like I'd keep buying new orchids because I kept killing them all, watering them too much, too little, whatever, right? And so now what I do before I water the plants, I kind of just try to connect with it and just feel, and I'll ask it in my mind, like, do you want water? Like, what do you need? Or I'll look at it and I'll try to see, how are the leaves looking? Do they look perky? Like, what's going on with the flowers? Are they turning toward this window? Are they turning away? I'm trying to cultivate my ability to have relationships with the plants so I can understand their language on their terms. And so now I try to feel for the answer and try to feel what the plant is telling me before I'll physically take my fingers and put it in the dirt and the soil to see if it's dry. Like
Beautiful.
And I tried it because I'm getting towards a question here because I want to ask if I'm on the right track. But I'm just giving you the background of what I'm doing if I'm on the right track. And so I try to kind of feel what the plant answers me before my physical senses try to then detect what the answer would be. And I really feel like my plants are thriving, and with the music I'm playing in my house, like back to what we were saying about sound, they certainly respond to the light, the sound, the energy. Like when I'm stressed out and all that, like I swear my plants look different the next day. And one of my plants in one of my rooms, I swear it was lonely. So I took another one. And I don't know if it's just my guilty mom imagination thinking, oh, that plant's all by itself in the room. But I swear I put another plant next to it and I think it's doing better. Like, I'm like, am I imagining this? So I'm going to ask Monica. So do you have any thoughts, or just for me and the audience, like, are these ways that we can cultivate our awareness and relationship with the plant kingdom? Am I on the right track? Where am I off? What do you advise?
Amazing. No, amazing. And whatever speaks and is comfortable for you, you just do. I think that the important part is the connection, like connect in some way, and whatever it is that it makes you feel connected. The same way, like we kind of have one rule for the way in which, how do you relate to some other human being? You know, it depends, right? And every time, you know, you might be able to go for coffee with many people, but with some people that will never work, or maybe for you it doesn't work, so you find your own way. And the trusting that there is no wrong, there is no right, there is no wrong, there is just connection, and the connection is already there. Like, we are intrinsically already connected, so you don't even have to establish a relationship. It's already there. You just have to engage with it and be like, they're already there, ready to go. Yeah. And they're waiting, and they're like, well, whenever you're ready, you know, we're just here. When you want to chat, we are here. So
that's super cool. And that's just it, is just being mindful and putting your intention there. And the other thing too is, I just, you know, just having the awareness of, like, the plants in my home are just as important to me as my dog. Like, they're part of my family, you know. And if I travel, or if I'm away for a period of time, I'm going to make sure someone's taking care of my plants. Same way I'd get a pet sitter or something. Like, to me, they're part of my family and responsibility. So it's just a respect for life on the same terms as we are, you know.
That's right, because it is life. So and if anything, you know, in some culture, you would know, especially with your interest in Native American and Indigenous wisdom in general, there is a very strong and clear understanding that you respect your elders.
Oh my God, yes.
Right? These are our elders.
True. Plants are most certainly our elders. Yes.
So if we approach them that way, then, you know, when you approach, it's easy to do with a big oak tree that is 800 years old, you know, because there's this feeling like, wow, this tree's been around for a while. But if we think of plants in this way, then it's very easy to feel the honoring and the respect, without considering not even starting considering that, you know, they are breathing you every day. You know, they're providing us with all the food every day. Doesn't matter what diet you're on. It's like you're eating plants. You are plants. So might as well, like, recognize that, and might as well get good relating with that, because the better relationship you have, the more nurturing you will receive from the intake of those bodies. So there is a lot there that I think people can gain from. And then, of course, at the deeper level, for me, and I think that's where I'm going, actually, this is where my heart is going, and so this is where I'm going.
Good. I was going to ask you before we close, but I couldn't let you go without telling us where you're at now.
Well, you know, while I was going back to the beginning of our conversation, while I was on this land at Christmas time and New Year's Eve, like feeling, why am I here? What am I doing here? And why my plan didn't work, you know? And of course, there was another plan. And I have this big vision that was given to me a few years ago now, like in the dark, and by a plant, and I think by the universe in general. And I understood the vision. Initially, I understood the vision just in terms of my science. And I was like, oh, this is what you can do next. And I was like, okay. And it was amazing and all of that. And then as the time passes, I realized, oh, wow, there is more to this. You know, there is this other thing. And then I created in my head, until like very recently, I created in my head this structure. And I was like, okay, so the name for this project is Resonant Earth. And it's like I was seen if I had to see a pyramid, I was seen as like, oh, the science is at the top, and then you go education, and then you got the well-being and the healing, really. And but what I learned during this time of isolation, it was like when I was forced to have to look into myself and see, like, but what is it that you really love, you know? And what actually came, it wasn't the science. It was the healing. It was the dieta work that we just talked about. And you know, when I spoke to friends around me who know me and they have seen me in that space, they were like, Monica, you know, this is the place where I see you. You're in total flow. It's like it's your natural environment. For me to, again, going back to, you know, what we were saying about feeling guilty or lazy, all of that. There is this program still that I'm working on at the moment inside, this conditioning that says that for me, even to say, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a space. Resonant Earth is most primarily about creating a space for people to experience these connections with nature, particularly plants, through a process which I know well, and it's very scientific in a way, which is the dieta, and so that they can really change at a deep level, or not even change, but like unfold and open at a deep level, because I think that's what we need. And even not just there, but I would love to, and my aim is to actually target particularly people in high corporate situation and people whose decision making has a big effect on a lot of people.
Impact. Yeah,
that's right. Because I feel that, there is this big resurgence of psychedelic, and everyone is having an ayahuasca ceremony and whatever ceremony. But the dieta work is a very different work. It's actually not as glamorous. It's actually pretty hard. But I've seen it. I know myself personally. And then over the last couple of years, I have been kind of helping other friends to go through this process. And again, it was almost by surprise. I didn't really plan it. I didn't really feel like that was what I was doing. But I saw what happened at the end of that tunnel. I saw who came out of those experiences, and it's just amazing. And they keep going. It's not just like, oh, you did that and then it's over. It just keeps unfolding. And it's, again, because you enter in a relationship that then it's for you for life, and you can nurture it and water it or not, but it's going to be there, and it's going to arise whenever you need it. And so I just feel like I could do the most brilliant science ever, and yet even my science with the plants that we have discussed is like, it has impacted a few people. Some people are inspired, but really, has it really changed anything? Like, do we have more forests? Did we stop cutting the forest down? Did we stop being abusive with the environment? Not really. So in that sense, the science has failed. Not me, the science in that way has failed. So I don't wanna produce more science that is just failing us, because science is a human endeavor, and why wasting time doing things that are gonna fail? And the way in which I can make sure that it doesn't fail us is by creating the ground for it to be planted in an environment that then allows it to thrive. And the ground is not a scientific ground. The ground is it's a heart-based ground. It's a healing ground. And so, the Resonant Earth, which started as a purely scientific project, now has been turned onto its head, and it's about the dieta work first and foremost. And the science is still there, but it's kind of like in the backdrop, waiting for the ground. So that first ground needs to be established. And for that kind of work, of course, the link to the land, the proper land, the appropriate land for this work to be supported, it's even more important. Exactly, because she's the co-creator,
Oh my God, you sound like me. I say the same thing. My healing ranch. I'm like, I tell that to my real estate agents. I'm like, you don't understand. The land is my partner. Like, we're working together. Like,
that's right.
The land is more because they keep talking about this house, that house. I'm like, I don't really care about the house. Tell me about the topography. Tell me, is there water? Tell me about the trees. Are there animals there? Like, they think I'm nuts. I'm like, they're like, wait, it's 4-bedroom. It's this. I'm like, I don't care. Tell me about the land first. I mean, the house is important, but that's so funny. You sound like me, because I'm like, look, the land is my partner, my co-creator.
That's right. It is. And
so important.
So that's what and so it goes
Resonant
back again.
Resonant Earth. Resonant Earth. Okay.
And it goes back in circle because, of course, I don't know the prices, what's happening there in the US at the moment, but here
Nuts.
it's impossible.
Oh yeah, and there's nothing on the market because everybody's bought
That's
it up
right.
and trying to escape the tyranny.
Same here. It's impossible, and at least in one realm.
Yeah, exactly. But like where you found your current place, all you need is that divine moment, that boom, and oh, can you come right now? I'll be there in 10 minutes. You know,
That's right.
And it's just like tomorrow could be the day. You just don't know.
That's right. And I'm working internally. Yep. I think it's an inner job at this point. It's like internally, I need to let go of any fear
and
that
the timeline
will be possible, any expectation that it needs to happen in my way. And it could happen in so many crazy ways that who knows. And but in my world, this land, which will be the perfect land for this kind of work, to support this kind of work, will be gifted by someone that understands what we're trying to do, which is saving the world. Really, that's basically it. And in this land, people will come and do the dieta work. And for me, it's really important. And this is a departure from the world as we know it, but it's necessary. For me, it's absolutely important that this work is done not for sale. So I'm not charging for this experience.
Well, how are you going to support yourself?
I don't know that yet.
Well, maybe
again, that's that.
Well, it could be like donation based.
Well, what I think is, have you done any Vipassana retreats before?
Yes, because I mean, you have to pay the bills, and you have.
That's right.
It costs money to have a property. I mean, you got to.
That's right. That's right. Income. And that's the thing. Is like. I feel that when you have these experiences, I know I saw it for myself and then I saw it for others, and Vipassana is a very good model for me that inspires me, because
what is?
Vipassana meditation, you go for 10 days and it's for free and everyone is looking after you, your food is looked after, your accommodation is looked after, you're just there to meditate. That's your only thing to do.
Wow.
And so in the same way you would come, and all you need to do is to just be there and do this work. The rest is all looked after. But for you to be looked after and loved and nurtured and supported for like weeks, and nothing is expected of you except for turning up, being there, do the work, find you. I think that when you come out on the other end, I know for myself, the amount of gratitude that you feel because the process is transformative, you become something new. So is the gratitude that then wants to give.
Wow.
So you're not paying because I gave a label. You're paying because you're not paying, actually. You're giving because you cannot help yourself. You have to. Because
you feel compelled.
That's right. And that's
you received so much. Yeah.
That's right. And you know that by giving, you're supporting the space for someone else to
have others
experience. Exactly. So it feeds itself. And so
makes sense.
From that point of view, I trust very deeply that it will be totally it will happen, it will work, because it's got the right intention and it's got the right way. And this world, as we know it, is crumbling also because it's not based on gratitude.
The old paradigm is
if I can pay, I can afford it, then it's mine. And it's like, no, it's not about, that's right. It's not about whether you can pay and buy things. It's not about how much money you can accumulate. It's about money, actually, can you share, can you give? If you have resources, that's what it's about. The resources are not there because you are so special. They're there because, you've been lucky in a way.
It's a blessing. Yep. And what's that saying? To those much are given, much is expected. I mean, and that's part of, like I was in the beginning of the show, I've been so fortunate, and it's like that's part of what drives me so much is I just feel compelled to give back. I mean, I'm just so lucky, and I have so much empathy and compassion for people that are even close to as fortunate as I am, and it's just it drives me. But this is beautiful. Monica, can you tell us just quickly as we get to the end, do you have an expectation of what country this is in and how much land you need?
I think I would like it to be in Australia.
Okay.
Because I'm here. and because there is a part of this country that is incredible. It's subtropical, it's so lush, and basically anything grows. From the fully tropical plants to the temperate plants, everything can grow. So you can really have a richness that is incredible. So, and also, you know, like I feel like I belong to this land. So, but of course, I'm not, you know, if I'm called that I have to do this somewhere else, I'll do it somewhere else.
You're open.
Because it's not about me, it's about what's needed to be done, and that's what you do. And so, and of course, you know, ideally we're talking about you know, several hectares, because it's not just about planting things for food, but it's also replanting to regenerate, which is part of the project itself. Because the project itself, Resonant Earth, is about planetary regeneration through sonic midwifery. That's its full title.
Yep.
So planetary regeneration initially was just about the actual regeneration, the physical regeneration of the environment. And I have a few ideas for the science to operate in that space and create regeneration strategies that are actually gonna work. And because at the moment, our regeneration strategy, there is a lot of effort done, it's amazing, but the efficiency is still too low. We don't have time. So the science that I'm envisioning and the idea that I have are to optimize those strategies, so that it's not about replacing any of the efforts that we're making. Actually, it's amazing, but making them work even better. Yeah.
Great.
So
great.
But then it became clear that you know, this regeneration requires the regeneration of our spirit first, basically. At the bottom line, that's what it is. So Resonant Earth is about regeneration at all levels. It's got the science there, which is the physical regeneration of the environment. But before that can happen, we need the spiritual regeneration of our human spirit. And by putting those two together, then we can share what we have learned. And that's the new education model. Because, you know, I work in an academic environment, and the universities, at least here in Australia, are in total disaster zone.
Oh, please.
Okay, same everywhere. Okay.
Same. Oh God, the medical system, the government, the whole thing is a
disaster zone. But that's good, because it's an opportunity to redream these systems in a different way. And so I think that when the two core points for me are, if you by regenerating the human spirit, you are compelled to regenerate the environment that makes our world. And by doing that, you then want to share what happened. And that is how we pass on our knowledge, and education is really about sharing the knowledge. So, and if we're lucky in the process of all this, we might even gain some wisdom, which is different. But how can we are the Homo sapiens, right? We are supposed to be the wise ones. So maybe it was a name that we gave ourselves, knowing that we will get there. So
amen. Put a fork in that one. That's great. Let's to your lips to God's ears. Let's hope so. That's for sure. Absolutely beautiful. Monica, how can people support you in the Resonant Earth Project and find you and your work and your wonderful book, Thus Spoke the Plant? Just point to us or the audience where they can find out more about you.
Yeah, so of course there is my website, but also like Facebook and the various social media. So Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Your name?
Yeah. Okay. Resonant Earth as well comes up now for Instagram. But I'm just starting to, because it's been changing so much internally for me that I'm still trying to massage it and change it. But I would like to do a crowdfunding soon, to see if I can raise some funds to help acquire the land and also set up, the system so that we can start, because we need to start. There is no more time.
Well, I'll be one of your supporters, my friend. That's for sure. And I would love to come when this comes to fruition. I would love to be on the guest list and experience that with you. So I think I'm excited for you. I feel like it's going to happen. I mean, it's just a matter of when the timing is right. And
that's right.
all that will be in the show notes for people listening and watching. if they want to contact you or participate or somehow help you or find out more about you, everyone, that'll be in the show notes for you to find out more about Monica. Yeah. And we will stay tuned for your next amazing contribution to this amazing life that we are in, my friend. And wow, just thank you so much for being here, for everything you've contributed, for your energy, enthusiasm, your wisdom, and your spirit. Just is very inspiring and encouraging.
Thank you so much, Amy, for, as I said at the beginning, your patience, because I know that we tried a few times, but I also realized, as I share with you, that of course this was the perfect time for us to chat, and and I feel very grateful, and I really enjoyed our sharing. So thank you.
I do too, Monica. I trust that it was all at the right time. So until we meet in person.
That's right.
Yes. Thank you so very much. And everybody, thanks for listening and watching and supporting Monica and her very important work and sharing the show to other people so she can get her message out there to help us protect the plants, respect the plants, work with the plants, learn from the plants, and just the bigger world out there, to open up everybody's hearts and ears as to this big, amazing world that we're all a part of together. Thank you for sharing, everybody. And thank you, Monica Gagliano. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would you like to support my mission to help empower people all over the world to be all of who they truly are? If so, please subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes, and share it with a friend. And if you're looking to take immediate action to align your energy and optimize your health, visit amyfournier.com. Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite. Let's awaken her together in you. I'm your hostess, Amy Fournier, and I already can't wait to be with you again and for you to hear what I have planned for the next show.
Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. To learn more about Amy, check out her website, amyfournier.com. That's AMYFOURNIER.com. You can also check out Amy's live and on-demand virtual fitness and yoga classes, and sign up for her newsletter to receive a free mini ebook of 3 of her top tips for making holistic health a lifestyle. Again, that's amyfournier.com, and get your ebook sent to your email immediately. Connect with Amy on the daily on Instagram at FitAmyTV, FitAmyTV, and watch many of the podcast episodes and subtopic clips on her YouTube channel, which is also FitAmyTV. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.